Welcome to the Dynasty Dummies podcast. I am Zach Reed. I am joined tonight by JMic at JMic Check, and this is the final episode of the 2024 Dynasty Dummies Rookie Hootenanny. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. We're turning the lights out. We are packing the band up. The roadies are taking down the stage. This is the final catch-all for the running backs. And we have covered some ground. This will be 54 prospects that we have talked about this year in the 2024 Rookie Hootenanny. I may end up watching a couple more depending on if I have time and if I have the inclination. There are a couple of tight ends that I'd like to get to put in the film notes. There are Blake Watson I'd like to check out as a running back. I probably should do diligence on a couple of those quarterbacks because Superflex is a thing, and Bo Nix and Michael Penix are also going to be drafted at some point during this draft. But we are a week away from the NFL draft. And man, I feel like we covered some ground, JMic. I feel like this was productive. I'm excited. I'm happy. This was kind of a nice closure.
Turn off the lights, the party's over. They say that all good things must end. What a privilege it's been, Zach. I too am happy. We have covered so much ground. We've probably watched more film this year than in most years in the past. A lot more players that we feel are fantasy relevant this go around. A lot more players that people in our leagues and our listeners can be excited about. And I think that this allows us the fervor, the excitement to continue to spur us on in our process refinement and the excitement that we have about continuing to discover ourselves. And one thing, Zach, that I'd love to be able to share with our listeners and with you today is something that's been chewing on me a little bit, this idea of blind spots and trying to continue to find self-discovery, to continue to build self-awareness about who we are. And when we get micro enough, our play styles and how we go about our leagues and refining what we do. And I want to point us quickly to what's called the Johari window. It's something that I was originally introduced to in my psychology classes when I was studying that back in the day in college, and developed by the psychologists Joseph Luft and Harrington Ingram. Essentially, it's a heuristic exercise that essentially put our lives per se, or put who we are in quadrants, and it allows people to get a better understanding about their relationship with themselves and with others. And so when we think about this, again, if you think about this in quadrants, the top left quadrant, when we think about ourselves and how we know the relationship to others, we can think about that quadrant as being the open quadrant, because in that quadrant, we have what we know about ourselves and what other people know about us as well. So really open spaces. So obviously people know that I podcast with you, Zach, and various other things that obviously I know and others know. In the bottom left quadrant, we go to the section, essentially it's like a hidden section, because it's things that I know about me, but there are many things that are not known to others or that other people don't know about me. And obviously, if I share those things, Zach, they no longer go in the hidden quadrant. They would have to move. They'd have to find different sanctuary. The bottom right quadrant is what's unknown, and that's probably the most fun one, but I don't want to hang there too long because that's what I don't know about me and also what other people don't know about me. So it feels like very ethereal, very abstract, very hard to do unless I'm probably going to therapy, unpacking a lot of really sad and strange things that I've suppressed and repressed for many, many years. So we won't hang there too long, but I want to go to the top right quadrant, which is essentially labeled for blind spots. And again, when we think about this, these are the things that I don't know about me, but other people know about me, or things that are known to others, but I don't really know it to be true for myself. I don't see it. I don't, whatever it is, it's a blind spot for me. Other people can see it plain as day. But for me, I'm struggling to be able to see it. And so when I think through this process of rookie evaluation, rookie scouting, when I think through the ability to be better about how we go about anything in this crazy game of Dynasty, I'm finding that it's wildly important that we take the time to shrink this quadrant, to shrink our blind spots as much as possible. And that's going to start with asking ourselves hard questions. It begins with being honest with ourselves about processes. And am I really putting in the work? And am I really doing the things that will help me become better at what I do? And I think that when other people know things about us that we don't know about us, it really pushes us in a corner because those are obviously things that our league mates can leverage exploitatively. And those are the edges that we often talk about, Zach. And when we navigate this game of Dynasty for the Dynasty Dummies podcast, we want to be a space that explores edges, that explores new ideas, understanding that we don't have all the answers, but we can certainly learn from many of the people around us in our spheres of influence. So as we navigate this last catch-all, as we navigate these last 6 running backs, as we navigate at the end what we'll call Dynasty Dummy superlatives, trademarking that, I want you as the listener, and I want us, Zach, to be able to continue to push the envelope, to shrink our blind spots, to learn more about who we are so that we can be better about what we do. And as a wise person once told me as a young man, if you knew better, you do better. And the hope is that we can do better by knowing better about who we are and how we navigate. So I will stop rambling at this point, Zach. We'll get into it.
I love the simplicity of this idea, the Jahari window. And for me, what immediately popped is not only do we try to find edges, but how important it is to kind of trim those edges off yourself,
Yes.
so that you're not getting exploited. And that's a really, again, underappreciated, underlooked, underutilized way to attack this game, but also broader. I think we tend to do that. We tend to attack the game, but the game is a metaphor for the bigger game.
Absolutely. So much fun. It's fun to be able to navigate those spaces. So I'm excited to be able to do it with you, Zach. Excited to be able to talk the rundown of running backs that we have today. We've got our last 6 running backs. We want to also make sure that we save some time. I've got some pointed questions that I'm going to ask Zach that I haven't gone over with him previously. So you're going to get Zach's off the cuff, off the rip answers to some hard-hitting Dynasty questions. And we're going to have a lot of fun, but we got 6 running backs on the docket today. We're going to talk a little Dylan Laube today. We'll talk some Isaiah Davis, some Frank Gore Jr., some Carson Steele. Anyone? We've got Will Shipley out of Clemson, and then lastly, Rasheen Ali. And I know previously I had mentioned on a previous show, we talked Tyrone Tracy. And again, Zach, I'll mention quickly, thank you so much for holding it down last week when I was absolutely struggling with the fever and bedridden. And it was not a fun time in the McCann household. But with that said, I know I talked about wanting to be able to bring Tyrone Tracy Jr. out of Purdue, and maybe I'll come with a dummy blitz, perhaps, just to be able to talk through some of the notes that I have for him. I also want to make sure that I come back around at some point to talk through my Roman Wilson rewatch with everyone, but I don't think the time for those things are today. I will look to try to get those out though prior to the draft next week. But with that said, Zach, before we get into these backs, anything else we need to do before we set our plate and eat up?
The only thing I've got is, if you've been riding with us, if you have taken anything from the Hootenanny episodes, the 2024 Rookie Hootenanny, if you're interested in getting the written version, you've had the audiobook version or you've had the video version, depending on where you found us. But I have paired with Fantasy Cares, beautiful charity that is, again, the best of what fantasy football in this community has to offer. Scott Fish kind of galvanized everybody and set us on this course to a positive direction. And for me, it's been a lot of fun. I've been able to donate my film notes to Fantasy Cares, and you can get the film notes as a thank you if you donate to fantasycares.org/dummies, and you get all 20,000 words that I have put down on paper this year about this rookie class. So, and if you don't want the film notes, I am perfectly happy with that. That's fine. They're not for everybody. Still go donate to Fantasy Cares, because that allows us, and I'm fortunate enough to be kind of part of Fantasy Cares, but it allows us to have bigger reach to help more people, to touch more lives, and it just is, again, the best part of the community. So fantasycares.org/dummies if you want the film notes. If not, just go to fantasycares.org. There are a bunch of different places you can donate. There are a bunch of different contests you can enter. If you're interested in the Scott Fish Bowl, the Scott Fish Bowl is affiliated with Fantasy Cares, scottfishbowl.com. There are a whole bunch of contests to get in to the Scott Fish Bowl, and t-shirts, and it's just, that's your one stop for doing good, making other people feel good, and making yourself feel good all at the same time.
There you have it. And I'm going to say it because I know Zach is far too humble to do so. And I think that it's worth mentioning Zach is one of the absolute best in this fantasy space at what he does. And what he does is he takes a ton of time to be able to watch the film, to chart what's happening, to clearly articulate to the reader, to the listener, what he sees on the film. And he makes it digestible in a way that you don't feel like you're being talked over. You don't feel like you've had to know ball. You don't have to have that dog in you. You don't have to have played 20 plus years of Madden or played football all the way through your development years or through college or anything of that nature to understand what's happening. And so truly, Zach's notes are a great resource to leverage, specifically during this time of the year, even in referencing in the past. And you're supporting an amazing cause with Fantasy Cares as well. So again, I cannot stress enough how fantastic of an opportunity you have to support a great cause and get tremendous value out of what Zach does on a day in, day out basis when it comes to this rookie process. That said, it's time to get to it with Dylan Laube, New Hampshire's finest, 5'9", 206-pound, 6-year senior. One of the really strange things, Zach, Dylan Laube, currently 24 years old. That man's going to be 25 before the season's over. With that said, out of New Hampshire, we're looking at a guy who was an FCS freshman All-American after he had redshirted. So in 2019, FCS freshman All-American. He led the team in all-purpose yards, which was rather interesting. If we go now to his more giant years, 2022 being that largest season, 245 carries, 1,205 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 49 receptions for 464 yards and 2 scores. First team all-conference, second team all-CAA. A lot of great things happened. In 2023, this past season, only played in 10 games, 160 carries for 749 yards, 9 touchdowns. However, you talk about being used in the passing game like an absolute boss. 68 receptions, 699 yards. That's 10.3 yards per reception, people, for 7 touchdowns. Zach, this man has more receiving production, I think, than Xavier Legette, if I remember properly. Dylan Laube, first team All-American this past season, on so many radars. Stocky build of a guy, but obviously getting things done at 5'9", 206 at the combine. He did run a 4.54, 4.02 short shuttle, 6.843 cone. So some good things. Not necessarily a great athlete, but a lot of really good things and a lot of crazy production for Dylan Laube. I've gone on enough. Zach, it's your turn. Let's talk Laube.
Well, deep in the rugged north woods in the heart of New Hampshire, there are whispers of sightings of a mysterious creature. New Hampshire residents periodically catch glimpses of the elusive wood devil, a slimmer, quicker cousin of the Sasquatch. I'm not so sure that it's not an even rarer sighting a bit further south in Durham, that NFL caliber running back, Dylan Laube. And Laube had an exemplary career for the Wildcats, but there's no question that his forte as a contributor is in the passing game. And JMic, you mentioned just his exploits, but Dylan Laube, his receiving line in this past year's game versus Central Michigan of 12 catches, 295 yards, and 2 touchdowns was better than 34 individual seasons of the other top 18 running backs in this draft class. So he had one game that was better than 34 seasons that this class put up. Laube is a very smooth route runner. He's able to be deployed from the backfield and also split out wide. His release at the line of scrimmage, which is something you don't necessarily talk about with running backs because most of the time they're deployed from the backfield, but his release at the line of scrimmage is great. Plus his ability to make adjustments to poor throws and quick transition to add yards after catch, that all adds up to this tremendous potential he has as a receiving back. As a runner, Laube is most effective when deployed off tackle. I think he's got really good vision out there and deceptive second level speed.
I think, Zach, his ability to be quick with his feet do him so many favors on a down-to-down basis. I think that it accentuates what he's able to do with rushing lanes to try to be able to maximize what he can get in an otherwise frame that I don't know how great the actual overall speed is, but the quickness and his ability to leverage footwork to not only manipulate defenders, second level defenders, when trying to make a move in the second level when running the ball, but even particularly when we're thinking through these passing in the passing game, his ability to evade pursuit to a large degree is something that's really fun. And you could see him, and big shout to Sam Schneider in the chat, throw him the ball day one. Like, he can be a guy who's getting third down snaps now. And it's not because he does a bunch of magic stuff, but he does them very smooth, very, very quick. And I like the subtleties of what his quickness does for him at both the line of scrimmage and at the second level in both the running and the pass game. Dylan Laube was a very pleasant watch for me, Zach. That said, we are talking about a guy who will be 25 in December. He did spend, obviously, he's a 6-year senior, as we mentioned previously. Let's talk Dylan Laube and the drawbacks, Zach.
Yeah, you're gonna have to throw it to him day one. Otherwise, he's gonna be retired here if you don't. But one of the stumbling blocks of trying to evaluate smaller school prospects is that the competition is by and large lesser. And that's not to denigrate anybody who plays at that level, but the caliber of NFL talent is not just pouring through UNH. And so it tends to magnify a prospect's strengths. However, issues become magnified too, because if you're struggling to do things against that level of competition, that's a big red flag. And I think Laube is a very willing pass blocker, but I think he's got just a little lack of immediate quickness. And it seems like that's going to be an issue at the next level. He often arrives to a blitz pickup just a half a step slow. And at the next level, that's going to be multiple steps and put the quarterback in danger. I think that lack of dynamism also leaks into Laube's ball carrying. He has excellent vision, but his ability to move laterally to escape trouble is limited. And for as good as Laube is as a receiver, he has a bad habit of being slow to present to his quarterback after he chip blocks. So he'll hit that immediate block, and then he'll wait 2, 3, and then turn. And by that point, the quarterback's already in trouble. He's already gotten the ball out or thrown the ball away or taken the sack, and he's just not quite on that right beat with that little chip and get out into the flat.
And I think it's so strange because not necessarily strange. Maybe that's not the right way to put it, but I do think that it's a case where you want so much more for him because of the production that we saw from the passing game. And I think that he will be wildly limited to typecast, to role. One of the really interesting things, I think, that as a guy who was an all-conference player as a punt returner, I think it will be interesting to see if he can get the opportunity with the new kick alignment rules that you've highlighted in previously to see if that's a way that he can break through or break out or break in. I think that would be fascinating to see.
Yeah, and I think with the split backfields too coming into vogue in the NFL, so I think he gets a roster spot with, like you said, the punt return, kick return. With that split backfield coming into vogue, the timing couldn't be better for Laube to enter the league, where he probably does profile as that reception specialist to start. He doesn't quite fit that lightning in the thunder lightning backfield. But I think he probably comes in, his profile is like a pass catcher plus, but I don't think the NFL is going to see the plus to start. So he's got to be that pass catcher and then have something break right. So not necessarily a guy you need to prioritize in your rookie drafts, but a player that in the back end of things, I don't mind adding because I like that profile.
And you will likely need to express patience. If Laube's a player that you are excited about, patience will be key. If he's able to break out and get that opportunity. On to the next. We're heading to South Dakota State to talk a little bit of Isaiah Davis. Jackrabbit, for those who may not be familiar, Isaiah Davis was the backfield mate to one player that I was very head over heels for a couple seasons ago, one Pierre Strong. He had a cup of coffee, obviously, in New England. We saw him get on the field a little bit in Cleveland. So Isaiah Davis is a player who was able to produce while Pierre was there, and obviously now being able to do his thing since then. Isaiah Davis, 6 feet, 218 pounds, fourth-year senior. Now, when we think Isaiah Davis, one of the really cool pieces is seeing him be his absolute best in these last 2 seasons. 2022, he had 249 carries, 1,451 yards, and 15 touchdowns, 21 receptions, Zach Reed rule, ding, for 173 yards, no scores. Even though he was first-team all-conference, he led his team in rushing. He did miss a game with a shoulder injury, which was strange there. However, fast forward to this past season, 2023, 236 carries, 1,578 yards, 18 touchdowns. Come on. 23 catches for 199 yards and a score, first-team All-American, first-team All-Conference, and he led the FCS in rushing, Zach. Isaiah Davis, ultra productive these last couple years, been on the radar a little bit for the last couple years. Let's talk.
Yeah, if he's everybody's sleeper, is he really a sleeper? Like
that boy wide awake. That boy wide awake.
That's it. Full disclosure, I have PTZZ. I cannot watch South Dakota State football without sweating profusely, breaking into hives, and muttering in tongues, cursing a long soured love of Zach Zenner. Probably a lot of you people listening don't even remember Zach Zenner, but he was in one of the first classes that I watched, and man, Zenner ran for 295 yards in a single game twice. Zach Zenner, who had 3 straight seasons of at least 2,000 yards rushing. That same Zach Zenner, whose first collegiate carry was 99-yard score against Kansas. That same Zach Zenner. Oh, wait, sorry. Who are we talking about again? It's Isaiah Davis. So, look, Davis is flying a little bit under the radar, not much. But some of the small school camouflage keeping him covered is gone, and it's going to be impossible to hide the 6 foot, 218-pound running back for very long. He's big and he's physical, but he doesn't go out of his way to seek out or initiate contact. So he can run with power, but he's not running power down your throat. When he is hit by a defender, Davis's contact balance often allows him to shrug off the would-be tackle, and you can't arm tackle him. Straight line speed is not a primary weapon for Isaiah Davis, but he does have enough juice to break off chunk runs where he initially separates from the defense before they catch back up to him. But I think it's his patience that truly allows Davis to consistently roll up yards. He has a knack for waiting and letting his block set up before he attacks. And this happens especially off tackle. And you think of him as being a between the tackles runner because he's so big and so physical, but he does an exceptional job of letting blocks develop off tackle and getting to the outside and adding chunk plays.
And I do really enjoy Zach that when he is, I think, at his best, he does not waste time after he sees where he wants to be. He is taking the step to cut and he is getting there. There is not a lot of wasted movement, particularly behind the line of scrimmage. There are times I think where he tries to bounce that I don't know that he's going to be able to see the same success with. But when he's at his best, his ability to get north-south is really awesome, especially with his frame, because we see him do the thing, I feel, far more consistently that we did not see the likes of someone who's also a larger frame back like an Isaac Garendo. We see Isaiah Davis running through so many laissez-faire tackle attempts or people who aren't squaring him up. And I think that that's something, especially with his frame, that's really tantalizing when we think about what could his prospects be at the next level if he ever got the opportunity, because unlike many of the backs that we're talking about today, he's offering the size, he's offering the frame that allows you to dream for more, which I think is really exciting for what he showed us on film. That said, Zach, Isaiah Davis is still a guy coming from South Dakota State, still a player that ran 4.5 at the combine and didn't wow in that sense. Let's talk a little bit about why Isaiah Davis may not get the opportunity that we may hope for.
So I think a fair portion of Davis's damage comes on the interior where he's churning forward for those hard yards. But I think he makes things more difficult on himself by missing optimal running paths far too often.
Yep.
I think he settles for good when better is just a cut away. It was right there, and he just doesn't quite see it or doesn't quite get there. And I think Davis is also a little bit of what I've deemed a Tommy runner. He's a pinball wizard where once contact happens on a play, he never quite gets away. He bounces from defender to defender. And part of that is he just doesn't have the speed and the acceleration to get gone. But he does tend to bounce defender to defender. When the offensive line breaks down and there is a defensive penetration early in a play, Davis tends to slow down to cut and lose that battle with an initial defender. He's not particularly laterally quick, and so he has issues there. And even when he gets a clean hole, I think Davis gets foot tackled from behind fairly often. So, like, he'll make that initial cut and start to go, and somebody will get him. Ultimately, Isaiah Davis is a fun name to bandy about when talking sleepers in the 2024 class. But I think he's going to need to be drafted to a solid landing spot and run into some luck along the way as well. If everything breaks perfectly, he could be a capable first and second down back with some reception sprinkled in, but he's a name I would keep in mind later in your rookie draft. So after the second round.
Yes, and I wanted to make sure that I said at his best, because those were the flashes that we would see, and far more consistently we would see the likes of, as you put so eloquently, Zach, and I get this picture of just a pinball machine, boing, 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 in that kind of unnecessary punishment at times that he's putting himself through. I think so much about Marshawn Lloyd, who's in this sense. Marshawn Lloyd, I think one of the things that I highlighted previously, Marshawn Lloyd's athleticism would get him out of the problems his vision would put him in. Isaiah Davis doesn't have the same athleticism to get him out of the issues that sometimes his vision can get him in. And that lack of consistency for a player who we're not looking at necessarily getting the opportunity out the gate is a little unnerving when we think about a down-to-down basis and what that can lead to at the next level. Again, wildly productive, fantastic collegiate career, and someone certainly I think that's worth your later round stabs in your rookie drafts if the NFL sees value in him. Again, I think I don't know if I'd be willing to express the patience with the lack of instincts that he shows on a play-to-play basis, but I think that it's probably still worth it, maybe, perhaps, question mark. Taxi squad.
Yeah.
We'll see about it. We're moving on to the legend himself, Miami Hurricane great Frank Gore, who's got eligibility again to – oh, wait. My bad. Frank Gore Jr., the sheet says. Jr., out of Southern Miss, 5'7", 198 yards. Excuse me. Golly. 5'7", 198 pounds. We're looking at a player who obviously had one of the all-time great Hurricanes and one of the great running backs in the NFL be his direct tutelage, which is pretty cool to see at as men of our age. Zach, I won't call us advanced years, but middle aged, if you will. but when we think about Frank Gore Jr., we're seeing a player who obviously had one of the best to be able to teach him up, but also was a productive player at Southern Miss. In his junior season in 2022, we're looking at 228 carries, 1,382 yards, 9 scores, 19 receptions. We like to see it. The year before, even as a sophomore, we saw 20 receptions. Very positive things happening there. He was first team All Sun Belt, and even obviously led the team in rushing. He runs it back in 2023, 231 carries, 1,131 yards, 10 touchdowns, 27 catches for 221 yards, 3 scores, things that we definitely like to see. We saw Frank Gore at the combine. He opted not to run, so we waited until his pro day. I believe we also saw Frank Gore at the Shrine Bowl, if I have it correct. I can't remember if it's the Shrine or the Senior Bowl, but Frank Gore was a guy I feel like he was trying to do his thing in the circuit, but not necessarily super active. Ran a 4.69 at his pro day, which was not great. He opted not to run the short shuttle or the 3-cone. So we're looking at a less than impressive athletic profile for Frank Gore Jr. But again, hard to deny what he was able to do on the field, Zach. Let's talk about Frank Gore Jr.
So I'm gonna need to just have everybody back down on the Frank Gore Sr. jokes, because I just looked it up and I am 2.5 years older than Frank Gore Sr. But in Greek mythology, the gods are immortal, ceasing to age past their physical primes. In reality, we have Frank Gore Sr., a man who played 16 seasons at running back and carried the ball 200 plus times in 12 of those 16 seasons. It's entirely plausible that Frank Gore Jr. is a demigod, a hero set to accomplish greatness or perhaps become an Argonaut. Gore is even slightly smaller than his father, carrying his 198 pounds on that 5'7" frame. In spite of this, Gore finishes runs well. He keeps his legs churning for every last yard. When running between the tackles, and yes, I said between the tackles at 5'7", 200 pounds, he has a very good patience and vision, and he allows his blockers time to create those running lanes, and he uses interior jump cuts to stay free from tacklers. Gore does a very effective job using pace as well. I don't think he always has to be flat out speed-wise to create chunk plays. Instead, he uses changes of speed, varying how fast he's going, kind of stops and starts. And once Gore gets into the open field, even though his 40 time didn't necessarily pop, he has enough top end speed to pick up long chunks of yards. But again, part of that is just the fact that he plays with pace so well.
And his contact balance in the midst of that, Zach, is something that I think shines quite a bit for him. While he's able to chunk, I think so much of the chunking that he's able to do, he does a good job with the tempo, as you said. He does a good job of accelerating when necessary and picking up the space when there's space to be had. But his contact balance, when he is hit at the line of scrimmage or when he is hit around it, allows him to maximize the athleticism that he does have. And so that coordination piece alone, I think, makes up for what I feel like, this is going to be strange to say, it feels like to some degree a lack of instincts and a lack of creativity as a ball carrier. His calling card is my tempo changes allow me the ability to let my body do the work and make the most of that. And while it was good for obviously a guy who got 759 carries in college and obtained over 4,000 yards rushing over 4 seasons, I really struggled to speak highly about his prospects, Zach. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Frank Gore Jr. does a great job finding the open hole, but there are times when he simply puts his head down and continues to run even when there's no path forward. And Gore posted several seasons of 20 plus receptions, but I don't think he's a natural pass catcher. I think he fights it. He will be adequate, but I don't expect him to add a lot of extra fantasy points through the air. And as a pass blocker, and you're going to need this as a smaller back to be in as a third down pass catching back. As a pass blocker, Gore's size is a hindrance. So you can't sugarcoat that. He gets beaten regularly by blitzers and kind of throws himself in the way, but he's not big enough to really make a difference. Daedalus created the labyrinth. Bellerophon killed the chimera. Icarus flew too close to the sun, and Jason led the Argonauts. Most 5'7" running backs would never get a chance to prove themselves in the NFL. But Frank Gore's lineage says that he will. He probably won't lead a backfield, but I do think he does have the chops in short bursts to be a hero. Maybe not.
I need a hero. I'm gonna move on. I think you put it really well. You put it really well, Zach. Carson Steele's up next out of UCLA by way of Ball State. What? 2 seasons at Ball State before finishing this last year in 2023 out in Westwood. At Ball State, his best season in 2022, 289 carries, 1,556 yards. Good for 5.4 yards per carry and 14 touchdowns. Good grief. First team All-MAC, led the MAC in rushing. I would say that might be a ticket to get you to play in some bigger and better ball in a bigger and better conference at a bigger and better school. 6 feet tall, 228 pounds. He makes his way to UCLA, where he gets 167 carries, 847 yards, and 6 touchdowns in an offense that was just really broken by the time they got to the end of the year with the changing out of the quarterbacks that they had and Chip Kelly struggle busing to some degree with the freshman quarterback Dante Moore. And I think they had one of the Garbers brothers there. Can't remember. But anyway, Carson Steele, a light and an otherwise dimly lit offense in Westwood for the Bruins. And we see a player who then came out at his own pro day because he wasn't invited to the actual NFL combine, runs a 4.7 540, has a 37.5 vertical jump. That's nice to see. Zach, let's talk Carson Steele, who was super productive at Ball State, went to UCLA, leads the team in rushing, and showed decent for himself.
Well, maybe this is because I've been reading so much with the boys every evening, but I think Carson Steele sounds like the protagonist in a middle school spy novel. Maybe the orphaned heir to a huge tech fortune who ditches algebra to foil the nefarious plans of some shadowy acronymic organization. Instead, Carson Steele was a bell cow back at Ball State for his 2 collegiate seasons there, and then part of a 2-headed attack for UCLA in 2023. Super spy Carson Steele is best running between the tackles where he can bull his way through the defense. He has excellent contact balance, and Steele finishes runs with power as well, driving his legs to get extra yardage at the end of carries. But I think the real surprise to me came in the passing game, where Steele is actually a dangerous pass catcher at 6'1", 215 pounds. He makes plays in traffic, and he can add yards after the catch as well. So a little bit of interesting upside there.
You would not expect him to be as smooth of a transitioner from catch to run as his size suggests, which, again, as you said, Zach, brings a really unique excitement anticipation for what could be. Really fun to see him punish defenders when running the ball. I think that he runs hard. I think that he does a pretty good job of being able to pick his way through trash. I don't know that the agility in the run game is something that is going to propel him the way that it did in his collegiate career. But again, with what he showed in the passing game, it does make me think that he's a guy that should at least have some sort of late round prospects for, maybe, Zach, possibly. Could it be?
Speed is never going to be Steele's forte, but he's especially deliberate behind the line of scrimmage. He has the 0 to 60 of a cement mixer. Steele also invites far too much contact for what I'm looking for. I think he looks to deliver hits rather than to avoid them. And too many times defenders were able to square him up. That does not play well at the next level. John Kelly, pour one out. While Steele has the strength to be a decent blocker, I think his lack of agility really hurts him when he's asked to account for quicker blitzers. If I were pressed for a stylistic comp on Carson Steele, I would say he runs like Pac-Man. It's all straight lines until the ghosts close in, and then he's forced to change direction. An initial look at Carson Steele is probably a little underwhelming. He profiles like a backup running back who probably gets most of his initial work between the tackles, one series at a time. But the value is in where you might be able to acquire Steele in rookie drafts after the third round, after the fourth round. Like, he may not even be drafted. And the fact that he actually does have a little bit of 3-down skill set if the opportunity arises. I don't expect it to. He doesn't feel like he's got the talent to take over a backfield, but that pass catching is pretty good.
I just find it so strange, Zach, for him to be so smooth in that aspect of the catch and run and that transitioning and kind of the athleticism that entails, the change of direction that can entail, and how that doesn't translate to him as a runner.
Yeah.
I don't like that is legitimate cognitive dissonance. I don't know what to do with that.
He's compartmentalized. This is me as a runner. This is me as a receiver.
It is so strange. And even in watching him on film, thinking, okay, I'm not seeing a lot of breakaway speed. I'm not seeing a lot of like breakaway play. I wasn't expecting him to run a 4.75 at his pro day, which feels like that feels real bad. Giving me visions of Lil Holyfield out of Georgia. We'll leave it there. On to the next one. We've got two players left. One that many of the Devy folks will know as a name that people have been excited about for many a moon. Will Shipley out of Clemson. Unfortunately, injuries marred an otherwise really exciting player and someone that people have been excited about for a very long time, but 5'10", 206 pounds, and had 3 somewhat productive seasons at Clemson. He busted on the scene as a freshman in 2021. He was a second-team freshman All-American with 739 yards rushing, and even added 16 carries as a freshman. And again, I think it's what people got really excited about. 2022, he takes another step forward. 210 carries, 1,182 yards, 15 touchdowns. He adds with that 38 catches for 242 yards. He's first-team All-ACC as a running back as well as a kick returner. And it's kind of wild to think that a guy in a program as highly ballyhooed as Clemson had been for the last several seasons, I feel like his stock kind of went the way that Clemson's has over these last couple of years, where really the luster has kind of come off a good bit. This last season, 167 carries, 827 yards, 5 touchdowns, 31 receptions. Continue to see the passing game work from him, 244 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And we saw Phil Maffa, who's just a monster of a running back, get way more carries in this past season for the Clemson Tigers. But again, we're looking at a player at his pro day running a 4.45 40, showing a 6.883 cone. So we're seeing that short area quickness. And we're seeing a player who, again, when we talk about all those fun things that we like about players in the passing game, Zach, I think that Will Shipley kind of embodies what we really want and like out of those other guys that we've talked about today.
Yeah, it's difficult to hold two opposing thoughts in your head at the same time. We have preconceived ideas, and when those things don't fit neatly into the boxes of those ideas, we get uncomfortable. Watching Will Shipley is a little bit like that. He's a player whose success comes from running between the tackles, but he also excels in space. Cognitive dissonance intensifies. Even without his senior year, Will Shipley ran for over 4,000 yards in high school and came to Clemson ready to take over a 3-down workload. Shipley has great vision inside, regularly gaining extra yardage between the tackles. I think he sets up his blocks really well. He's patient enough to let his offensive line get leverage before he accelerates through the hole. Most of Shipley's best work, however, comes in space, where he utilizes both sharp cuts off a plant and running angles to maintain space between himself and defenders. Getting Shipley in space is made easier by his ability in the passing game. He's a natural hands catcher and transitions back to a runner very quickly, creating yards after the catch. So a lot of things you like to see from a running back.
Yeah, and I think that he often puts on display cuts that allow him to make the most of what he's doing in the open field. When he's operating in space, he's optimized to such a great degree, and I think that it's really fun to see him do the thing that is probably his trump card in a class that doesn't have players that are really operating with, hey, this is the thing that I do really well. If absolutely nothing else goes well for me at the next level, I know that this can be done or this can happen. And it's his ability in the passing game. And I think that whether it be screens, whether it be things a little bit further down the field, the patience that he's able to exhibit to let his block set up for him to be able to continue to do really good things. I like Will Shipley in the passing game, and I don't know if he qualifies enough for what you often call pass catcher plus, Zach. But Will Shipley, I feel like out of this group, offers as good a shot as any, as someone who can give you more as we go forward. And even as we continue forward, I think there's a lot to like about Will Shipley. Let's talk a little bit about his weaknesses.
Yeah, I think perhaps he's trying to suggest something about the duality of man. But it's odd to see Shipley, a player who is so good in space, though, be unable to get there on his own. So you need to get him there. You need to give him the ball through the air to get him in space. His vision off tackle leaves a lot to be desired, and so often he's unable to get the edge on designed runs to the outside. Shipley's definitely not a power back, so he relies heavily on attacking defenders with wiggle and shiftiness. And I think that that's a fact that he sometimes forgets in the moment when he decides to take defenders head on, and that's a losing proposition for him. Will Shipley is an oddity. He's a pass catcher plus profile who needs to be scheme touches in space, but also excels on carries on the inside. He probably begins his career as a third down back, but I think he could surprise teams with his effectiveness inside if he finds himself in a situation where his carries become elevated.
And I think so much, Zach, it's really hard sometimes for us to talk about a player and what they've shown us on film and not take into account so much of what's brought a player to this point. And we would be dead wrong, even though we're talking film grades, to not bring up the fact that in his career, we're looking at a player who has 9 drops in his career, 8 fumbles in his career, He missed 3 games as a freshman with a left leg injury, and that required off-season surgery. He missed a game as a junior because of concussion symptoms, and he had to be carted off in the bowl game, his final game, with a non-contact injury against my Wildcats in 2023. And so we're looking at a guy whose injury just marred so much of what he could be, and some of the mistakes that also took away. So we're looking at a guy who needs and was needing a lot of help to really be at his absolute best, as opposed to being someone who was creating the best, which I think we have one more player that'll be fun to talk a little bit more about that about. But Will Shipley is fascinating nonetheless, especially for the pedigree of the player that he showed to be as a freshman and what we saw in the passing game. I'm going to be fascinated to see how the NFL treats him, if he's going to be one of these first guys when we think about day 3 for the NFL draft. Kind of what is it going to look like for Will Shipley and how the NFL sees him? I think it'll be fun to navigate that. Okay, one last player left to talk through today. Quite frankly, might be the best of the group that we talk about today. One, Rasheen Ali. Rasheen Ali, Marshall Thundering Herd, stand up, 5'11", 206, fifth-year senior. And when we're looking at the life and times of Rasheen Ali, obviously, we're looking at a player who had to do some really awesome things to even be on the radar because of the fact that Marshall's not been good at football for a little while, unfortunately. However, nonetheless, this past season, 212 carries, 1,135 yards, and 15 touchdowns. And I'd be dead wrong to not bring up what he did 2 seasons prior in his quote-unquote freshman season, per se. It's kind of weird when we think through COVID and things of that nature. But in 2021, 250 carries for 1,401 yards, 23 touchdowns, Zach, 23 touchdowns, and 2 boot, 46 receptions for 342 yards and a score. Yes, it dwarfs what happened in 2023 when he was still very productive, but when you bust on the scene like that, you tend to get people looking at you and being really excited about your prospects. So now that Rasheen Ali is finally here, didn't work out at the combine, didn't work out really at his pro day, just got measurables. We're looking at a player who was ultra productive, Zach. Let's talk a little Rasheen Ali, and can we get excited for a Thundering Herd? Can we?
I think this is 2 weeks in a row where we saved the last bite, the best bite of the meal. You set that aside but one of the most effective narrative devices, one that creates tension, drives emotion, promotes connection, is called the double man in a hole arc. It's the way J.K. Rowling structured The Prisoner of Azkaban, rolling between successful highs and drops into potential ruin. It's the story of the Lion King, Simba in line to be the leader of the pride, only to be exiled as party to his father's death. It's Rasheen Ali bursting onto the scene as a sophomore with over 1,700 all-purpose yards, needing to take personal time and separate himself from the game the next year, then returning in force as a senior to lead the Marshall rushing attack, only to fall victim to a biceps rupture during Senior Bowl week. The piece of Rasheen Ali's game that is responsible for most of his success is his quickness, but not necessarily just physical agility. Ali makes exceptionally quick decisions behind the line of scrimmage. The time between him taking the handoff and the point where he hits the accelerator pedal is very short. And once he gets through to the second level of defenses, Ali has really good vision, avoiding defenders and chewing up open field. The fact that Rasheen Ali has elite long speed allows him to pull away from defenders and score on any given touch. And I know we didn't get his testing numbers. I don't care. Rasheen Ali is an elite long runner. He is fast. And even though he is on the lower edge of prototypical size, he's 5'11", 204 pounds. Ali can run between the tackles. He uses jump cuts effectively. He uses quickness, and he's got great vision.
Instincts, baby. Instincts for the win. And this is probably, and again, I know it's been a while since I've been able to talk running backs, or that we've talked running backs in any kind of a great deal, Zach, since really way early on in the Hootenanny. Rasheen Ali has the instincts, the explosiveness, the creativity that I like to see out of running backs that make me excited about what could be. And I think that his explosiveness, his cutting ability, specifically his instincts to be able to chain moves together are as fun, definitely, as anybody that we've talked about today, and could quite rival some of the players that we've even talked through before when it comes to those areas of being able to play. I like his patience that he consistently exhibits to be able to leverage behind blockers. And I think that when we think through all of the production that we saw, the fun piece is this, Zach. We're looking at a player who's not just a single hitter or a doubles hitter. We're looking at someone who puts so many good things together on so many plays. I don't know how we can look at Rasheen Ali and not be excited for his prospects at the next level. Yeah. And that's not to say that he's somebody that we're just going to run to the podium and try to take earlier than what the NFL or I'm not trying to sit here and overhype a player, but especially in this group of 6 players that we've talked about today, again, the instincts, the cutting ability, and what he's able to consistently do from an explosiveness standpoint, all should have people very, very excited, or at least have people going to look up, okay, let me do my due diligence on Rasheen Ali. Go ahead, Zach.
No, I was just going to say, you hate to, and it's so cliche and trite when people say nobody is talking about this player. Mm. There is such a void of people talking about Rasheen Ali. Like, I didn't realize, I was not expecting to be as excited about this player because I hadn't heard anything about him until I watched.
It's wild. It's really wild to think about him being the last running back that we've talked about, though, Zach, in a class that we've talked before, specifically with the running backs, overwhelming on the whole. What do you have to say about Rasheen Ali's areas of opportunity?
Well, the highlights are absolutely incredible for Rasheen Ali, but the low points are canyons. Ali is brilliant and brutal sometimes, all in one package. His burst, which goes from 0 to 60 in no time, turns into a detriment when he accelerates before he's plotted out his running lane. He sometimes will slam headfirst into that linebacker. And once he's in the open field, it occasionally feels like he's running on racing slicks. The speed is there, but his quick cutting ability disappears when Ali is flat out. And another thing is ball security. I think ball security is an issue with Rasheen Ali, although he does a really good job carrying the ball in 2 hands and into contact with 2 hands. What he'll do is he'll lift the ball and his arms to meet the defender, and that puts it on the ground more often than is ideal because the defender gets first crack at the ball there. The biceps injury that Rasheen Ali suffered almost definitely set his NFL dreams back just a little. But in less than a week, we'll find out just how concerned teams are with Ali's arm and just how enamored they are with his talent. With a solid landing spot, Rasheen Ali becomes one of the few potential 3-down backs there are in the 2024 class. And I think he's got a chance to write the ending of his own story and make it a good one.
Ooh-wee. That is high praise, Zach. That is very high praise. I think the the 11 fumbles, the 6 fumbles in 2021 and 5 fumbles in 2023, as you highlighted, are just not fun to be able to see. And you don't want that to be something that stunts his opportunity at the next level. But Rasheen Ali is exciting. And I think that for everything that he doesn't necessarily give you in consistency with really breaking down folks after the line of scrimmage, we're looking at a player that gives you all of the fun fantasy point goodness that you can hope for in opportunity and explosiveness. And I think that if he can get and stay healthy,
yeah,
this could be a lot of fun, y'all. It could be a lot of fun. Zach, we've gone long enough talking about the last 6. It's sad. It's encouraging. It's exciting. It means we're getting closer to the draft. But this is the last 6 players that we'll be discussing as it pertains to the Hootenanny catch-all. So let's talk through film grades for these 6 specific players. If you want to give any kind of context overall, we know that a lot of these guys probably aren't breaking into the group that we've talked about previously, but obviously it's your show. You can navigate it however you see fit.
So Rasheen Ali is clearing away my number 1 back that we talked about today. I think once you get past those first 5 for me, the Corum Benson, Ray Davis, Braylon Allen, Jonathan Brooks, like that group, once you get past there, I think it's open season to talk Rasheen Ali. I've got Rasheen Ali in that same group as Marshawn Lloyd, Bucky Irving, and Kamani Vidal, which is that group behind that clear top 5. I think he's very talented. And again, injury concerns are what they are, but it's the same thing with Jonathan Brooks. You've got injury concerns with him, but oh man, there is some serious upside. Out of the players we talked today, Will Shipley is the second one. He's actually in a tier just below that group, where I've got Rasheen Ali. He and Cody Schrader are kind of in a similar tier there. The next player that we talked about today is Isaiah Davis. He and Dylan Laube are pretty close to me together in a tier with Jalen Wright, Audric Estime, guys that I like but have some warts. Beyond that, Frank Gore, man, as much as you want to see Frank Gore Jr. come in and carry that torch like his dad did, it's hard. You're going to have to squint an awful lot to make a picture that happens. And then bringing up the rear for this group, and man, it's a good thing that Isaac Groendo is in this class, because otherwise Carson Steele would be at the very bottom. But bringing up the rear is Carson Steele in this group. So Ali, Shipley, Davis, Laube, Gore, Steele for this crew we talked about today.
I had it very, very close to that as well, Zach. I've got Ali with a grade that's I think higher than everybody in the, not I think he's higher than everyone in this group. I've got him. It's kind of weird. I still don't have him ahead of the likes of Estime, who's again a player that I know that I liked a good bit more on when it came to film grade. But he graded similar to the likes of Jalen Wright, who I also have in that area. So we're talking, if we're looking at my group of folks, this would put him right at RB8 in my film grades, which I was not expecting to see anybody from this list be anywhere near close to that area. So that was kind of cool to see. Will Shipley's next up as well. Dylan Laube brings up, I think, what for me is a very clear delineation in the group of guys that we've talked about. It's those 3 guys that I have, I would say, better than otherwise grades. Isaiah Davis kind of flirts with that. So maybe it's those 3 guys, Isaiah Davis, and then in the rear, similar to you, my lowest rated one was Frank Gore Jr. Carson Steele was ahead of him by half of a point in my grades, but I just don't. Those are just a couple of players that I feel like you have to squint so hard to really see awesome things for on the fantasy space. But again, I could be wrong. as we often say, Zach, we're just dummies. We just tell you what we see. We're just a couple dummies. I'm going to be brief with some of these superlatives, Zach. These were just some questions, and I won't go through all of them because, again, we're already at almost the hour and 10-minute mark. But just for the fun of this class, since we're not going to be recording next week, I'm going to pose some questions to you. You're going to tell us the player and or person that comes to mind when we think about all of the prospects, quarterbacks, tight ends, wide receivers, running backs, the whole lot. You choose one, so I'll let you choose your own adventure. You can wax poetic momentarily as you navigate the things. So let's jump into it because I think this will be a little bit of fun for folks to be able to think through. So Zach is locking in. He's thinking through his entire list, his catalog in his brain of all billion players that he's been able to list with 20,000 words. Zach, here we go. The player in this class that you're most looking forward to obtaining on as many dynasty teams as possible is
Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers. And part of that is because I play in a lot of outhouse leagues, which are 1.75 premium. And I know that we talked, I had one pre-draft draft. And I took Brock Bowers at 104 with Malik Neighbors still on the board. And I know that turned your head a little bit. I know it did. It was a tough decision for me as well because I love Malik Neighbors. Brock Bowers can be a solid producing quarterback in tight end premium leagues at the tight end position.
Man, oh man. Yeah, like you said, Zach, when you had messaged me that's why I asked, like, how do you feel about it? Because when I think about Malik Neighbors, like I've told you before, Malik's my favorite. My favorite watch in the class, just my favorite watch out of all players, all positions, all the things. And as I mentioned before too, when we first started watching film back earlier in the winter, I was like, all right, we'll start Malik Neighbors film. We got another one. We've got another one. So I've been pretty excited. But obviously I get it, and the difference that he can be in these tight end premium leagues is huge for sure when it comes to Brock Bowers. All right, Zach. The player, we're going to call this one the I just don't see it. I just don't see it. The player that so many folks that you've heard are big fans of, but you just don't see it.
Man, that's a good question. I think the one that comes to mind really quickly is Audric Estime. And I know that you and I see him a little bit differently. I keep seeing people say Audric Estime has great burst. I'm like, no, it's not burst. He has excellent long speed. He has the tractor trailer truck that is going down that 7-degree incline and picks up speed. He runs with inertia, but that is not burst. It's just not. And the other, I mean, maybe it's just running backs, but the other player that gives me that same vibe, but is in a different tier because people want to put him at running back 1 is Braylon Allen. I know he's young. I know he's big. Somebody the other day told me he's basically the same size as Derrick Henry, to which I sent them a photo of the two of them together. And he said, well, he's pretty close. Henry's 6'4", 240, and Braylon Allen is 6'3", like 227. And I'm like, no, I have his combine measurables. The guy is 6'1", and whatever it was, a little over 220 pounds, or so. He's not Derrick Henry. We're not there. He's fine. He's good. He's serviceable, but this is an entirely different running back landscape in this class. And to put Braylon Allen up at the top of it is a little bit different, a little bit difficult for me. He's 6'1", 235. Like, he's big, but Derrick Henry is an entirely different species of human.
Yes, I'm with you there. I think my answer for that one would be Isaac Garindo, but I'm going to leave it brief. Yes, it's the Louisville hate, but also where people have Garindo rank, I am. I just don't.
I mean, he's 18 right now, but I've only watched 18 running backs.
There's that. I've got two more, Zach. I'll be brief. Like I said, I have an absurd list here, but we'll do two more because I think it's fun. One, the player you wanted to like more, but didn't quite get there for you on film.
Oh, you're gonna make me talk.
I think I know your answer.
Yeah, you're gonna make me talk about Jalen McMillan. And
Yep.
Like he was I was like, oh man, this is gonna be my Amon-Ra St. Brown, like where everyone's overlooking him because he's had some players around him and he just didn't do it. He didn't do it the way I wanted him to do it. He's fine, he's good, but I wanted him to be so much. I wanted him to be Taj Washington. That's what I want. I wanted Jalen McMillan to be Taj Washington. But yeah, that's the guy. I wanted it.
It's tough out here because I think that for me, the answer is the other non-Roma Dunze Washington wide receiver, and it was Jalen Polk. Because I think I would see some things from Polk that kind of got me excited, like, oh, this is gonna be fun. And there were just some incompleteness that I did not expect, considering that people have been telling us. I feel like it's been a pretty steady drumbeat. We've got 3 NFL wide receivers in Washington. We've got 3, and it's like, we've got Roma Dunze, who's like he's the Beyonce of this Destiny's Child, and then we've got a couple of other pretty good players. But all right, last one, Zach. That will end off with the player that you liked way more than you thought you would going into this process.
Yeah, and there are a couple. Xavier Worthy was one that I didn't like. He's my wide receiver 3. Like, and again, he's in that tier with Thomas and Odunze, and I think they're all very good. And if I were drafting, you have to take Odunze first. I will fully accept that. But he was one. Taj Washington, I did not even expect to watch. And then to like him as much as I did. And I know he's a slot receiver, and I know, but I don't know how much you watched Taj Washington or if you did it all, because I did that the week that you weren't under the weather. But I think he was almost done a disservice by having Caleb Williams as his quarterback, which is weird to say, having the best quarterback in the class as your quarterback. But the way Caleb Williams creates outside of the frame of the play is not, because Taj Washington gets open quick. He is that slot, that quick separator, making that cut and slant. And that's not really how Caleb Williams played, because Caleb Williams would drop back and then he would turn his back on the field to escape pressure, and he would reset, and then he would slide out, and then he would make a throw downfield. And I think it really, Taj Washington was the receiving leader on that team. He was the number 2 to Jordan Addison. He was the 2 or 2B under Drake London. And so he's a much better receiver than I anticipated him being, and a lot more fun to watch. And then the other one, obviously, we talked about him tonight, is Rasheen Ali. Like, did not see that coming. And Kamani Vidal, same thing. Like, the small school guys really sneak up on you because you don't expect them to be. There are a lot more players who burn out than there are players who come in that you're interested in.
Yes, no question about that. Ones I'll posit real quick in that same category. Marshawn Lloyd. It was one of those. I was not familiar with your game, sir. So I apologize. I was not familiar, because I do like. I was like, wow, this is a good thing.
He may be the best runner in this class.
He's fun.
Like,
He's fun.
yeah.
He's fun. And I'll throw 2 wide receivers out that, again, I was not familiar and I was not expecting to like them as much as I do. On the little bit of, I guess, higher end tier, Ricky Pearsall. Was not expecting to see the things that I saw out of the motion man, the motion man, the motion man. And and I know that we don't see necessarily eye to eye on this player, but the flashes that I saw from Jermaine Burton leave me really excited for what could be. So he's my trap. He's my trap.
You're not in the minority. This week was the Jermaine Burton week on Twitter. It was Matt Harmon tweeted out about. Oh yeah, Matt Harmon tweeted out about Burton. There were several bigger names that gave some Jermaine Burton love. So I think Scott Barrett may have had some Jermaine Burton tweets. And,
all right.
So you're in good company there.
That's the thing, though. If everyone's excited about it, I gotta do better about my answer. but the flashes that I saw from Jermaine Burton, and we talked about it even that week. Just yes, there are absolutely inconsistencies there, but when engaged, like this dude was balling, and it's awkward and weird to be at Georgia, then Alabama, and still not consistently be like the guy or a guy that the passing game is built around, but the flashes are really fun. So I'll leave my questions there for now, Zach. Maybe we'll pick this up again when the actual after the draft happens, or who knows what the case will be. But man, the Hootenanny has come. The Hootenanny is going in the 2024 books. What a fun ride, Zach. Week in and week out, we had players that we didn't absolutely hate as we watched the film. We watched a lot of players and really got excited for a lot of fun prospects that fill this draft and make it really a 4 rounds that you're excited to be able to have picks in, as opposed to dreading when you're getting in the latter half of the draft. So it's been a privilege. It's been a pleasure. Zach, before you get to the final words, I want to just throw this out to our listeners, to the folks who have consistently rocked with us for years, to the folks who just found us this year. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Zach and I are family as it stands, and so we would do this if nobody listened. This is something that he and I thoroughly enjoy. And if it was the opportunity for us to just be able to get together, to commiserate, to talk, to laugh, to share time, to share perspectives, we do this without an audience. I want to be clear. The fact that we get to do this with folks who show love, who show encouragement, who show up in the chat, who show up in the comments, who send DMs, who want to hear our perspective about players that hardly anybody's ever heard of. Like, y'all, it is a blessing. It is a privilege, and it is an honor to share the space with Zach and to share time in your earballs and your eyes and your thought processes. The fact that you would open up your mind to hear from us, to take note or take mind of what we have to say, it is legitimately humbling. And I am so stinking thankful and grateful that you would open up your time and your ears to us. Thank you. Truly, 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 truly. Thank you. Zach, I'm going to leave it there. Obviously, final words, as always, go to you.
I'm going to echo that, not quite as eloquently, but it really is like the fact that you listen, the fact that you join JMic and myself, where like this is so much fun for us as an exercise, being able to talk to each other and go through this, but then to be able to share it as broadly and as well received, which is also fun. I mean, it's humbling. And such a, like, again, it's one of those where you hear a lot of people have negative interactions and the horror stories on Twitter, and we don't have that. The audience that we've cultivated, the people in the chat, the people who listen to the show, the people who DM me, the people who interact with me on social media, almost to a person, it's fantastic. It is beautiful, and we really appreciate that you are here and contributing to this, because that's really what it is. This is a relationship. We're not just doing this and filling up the trash receptacle. This is an interaction. This is us talking to you, you talking to us, and really having that communication in it. And it means so much to both of us to be able to do that and to see how this show has grown and progressed, and how the community has grown and progressed and kind of and enveloped us. We got kind of a JMic hug going on from the community, which is really nice, having been there firsthand. So we really appreciate this. Has been an amazing hootenanny. It's been fun. We have done so many episodes and so many players. We just said we've done 54 players, 54 different film profiles, and that's just an amazing, astounding number to me. The fact that we took the time to watch 54 players, and that there were 54 players like worth watching. Like this was a fun class, a great class. Your suggestions, the audience participation portion of the program, these catch-alls, these were awesome. You gave us some really great prospects to watch. So this has been fun. If you enjoy it, if you aren't ready to let go, fantasycares.org/dummies. If you donate, you get the film notes. You can have those forever. They're yours as a thank you for your gift to fantasycares.org. But we're gonna play you out. It's time. The Hootenanny for 2024 is done. Next week, I'm pretty sure that I will be here for day 1 and day 2 on the Fantasy Cares feed. JMic, whatever. I know you've got some family commitments, but if you're around, if it works out, come hang, because you know we love to have you. We love to have your voice, your opinion, just sharing a platform with you is one of the greatest joys I have in my life. And so we'll be here I'll be here next Thursday, next Friday. We're going to talk rookies. The week after that, I think we're doing a show with the Dynasty Junkies, which will be fun. And then we'll have to reassess, figure out what's going on for the 2024 season. But the Hootenanny is over. We're gonna put it in the can. We'll reconvene next year. The dance hall will be here. We've already got it pre-booked. So we'll see you for the 2025 Hootenanny. JMic is at JMic Check on Twitter. I am at Tacit Assassin 13. The show is at Dynasty Dummies. We really appreciate you rolling with us. This has been the Dynasty Dummies. Thank you for listening. Peace.